Business Focus with Kudzi Sharara on the Champions League breakdown.
Good morning to you, Kudzi. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Tinashe. Good morning, everyone.
Okay, great. We'll talk about it before you go for today. But let's begin with the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange trading update for Friday.
Thank you, Tinashe. So the volatility was in the negative territory on Friday, with the All-Share Index losing 0.45%. The top 10 index easing by 0.54%. And then the VFX was positive, up by 0.26%. So you can see there that the market is trading in a way sideways, although in the negative territory. Just looking at the top risers and fallers for the day, Zim Papers was the top riser with a 12.86% gain. SBC also putting on 12.52%. Last week, SBC released its financials, and if you look at those financials, I think most of the indicators were looking on a downward trajectory. If you look at their profitability, if you look at their income, they were lower than prior year comparative. So that's SBC. Just looking at, for example, looking at the bank, because they've got the FBC holdings, which also have other units like insurance and the like. But just looking at the bank itself, you look at their net interest income was slightly up, and then you look at their revenue was also slightly up than prior year. But when you then look at their total other income, it was lower than prior year by almost half. And then you look at their total net income, again, it was lower than last year. So when you look at those numbers, of course, these numbers don't make much sense, because you are looking at the previous year, 2023, half year to June, we were using the Zimbabwe dollar. And then now we are talking about using the Zimbabwe ZiG. So obviously they've done some calculations, but I think some calculations might not be as accurate as you'd want, because you have to follow certain accounting principles and the like. And probably then it's very difficult then to compare whether the business has created value or it has not created value. But these are the numbers that we have from FBC. So I thought I can highlight that. And then Wheeldale also positive by 6.45%. South Africa putting on 5.27%. Virtual also adding 4.11%. On the downside, the biggest loser was OK Zimbabwe, which is in the retail sector. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about the retail sector, but it was down by 7.71%. CPZ also coming off by 6.97%. And over the weekend, Tinashe, CBZ announced that it is restructuring, and the restructuring exercise will result in shedding of jobs. So about 13 executives have been sent on what they call garden leave, so until the end of December. So this is the restructuring taking place at CBZ. And unlike what we have seen in the past, where they start by job losses at the shop floor level, they started with their executives. Before this, they had about 34 executives, even for some of their smaller units. And now they said out of the 34, 38% of those executives have gone on garden leave as they do their restructuring. I'm sure they will start scaling down to middle managers and going downwards as they restructure their business. So that's CPZ there coming off 6.97%. I don't know how the market will react again today following those that announcement over the weekend, which also saw the deputy CEO Jack Smith also going on garden leave. So that's an interesting development there from CBZ. EcoCash, which also went through its own restructuring with the shedding of jobs as well and realignment, also coming off there on Friday, down by 4.1%. Delta losing 2.69%. We'll talk more about the manufacturers such as Delta with regards to what is happening in the economy at the moment. Matimba Construction also easing by 0.43. Not much happening on Friday in terms of the funds that were invested. Delta getting about 418,000 each, and then Econet, FDC, CPZ, and OK Zimbabwe also getting a sizable chunk of the funds that were invested. not much funds going into the market. I think hardly a million being traded there, a million big being traded there on Friday. It will be interesting how the market will react as we go into the new week, whether there is going to be more money or the market will continue to take sideways. Your guess is good as mine.
All right, Kudzi, just a question that is popped up here from Elder Samanyanga in Banket. Hans, what is garden leave?
I'm not sure. I didn't research on it. It's a term. I think it's a fancy term to just say you are going on. Maybe it's a paid leave, but I will leave that to. I'm sure there are HR experts who are listening who can send us the correct answer on that one in terms of what a garden leave is all about.
Okay. Maybe you can also help us through by coming through on our WhatsApp platform, explaining to us what is garden leave. What is garden leave? Come through on 0719 100404. Someone says that garden leave is a transition period for employees who give or are given notice of termination, keeping them on the payroll but away from the workplace. Under the leave, employees are prohibited from working for the competition or for themselves. That's Achimu Sonza from Dama Falls giving us the definition there.
Thank you, Achimu Sonza, for that definition. So these guys will not be allowed to work for themselves or for anyone else until the expiry of that garden leave, which is at the end of December. And they will be getting their pay, but they won't be reporting for duty at CPZ. Thank you there for that response.
Okay. Another question coming through says that I want to know, Kuti, do shares deplete if you don't sell them for a long period, for example, 2 years?
Your shares will remain your shares. If they were 10, they will remain 10. If they were 1,000, they will remain 1,000. However, their value changes every day depending on the prices that they'll be trading at. So if for example, we're talking about, let's say we pick OK Zimbabwe, which was down by 7.71% on Friday. It means that the value of your shares, if you are holding OK shares on Friday, their value went down by 7.71%. And every day that counter trades, the value of the shares will change hands. And in Zimbabwe, apart from the value changing in terms of share price movement, it also changes in terms of what is happening with the exchange rate. So, for example, if your shares last year, if you were to sell those shares and be able to buy $100, if you sell them today, you might not be able to buy $100, or you might be able to buy more than $100. So that is a changing in value. I think I have answered that one well.
Okay. Kudzi, what is the latest that we are hearing from Confederation of Zimbabwe Retailers?
Yes, so that's a statement that was released by their president, Delford Mtashu, and obviously I'm sure some of us have seen what is happening in our market in terms of exchange rate, the exchange rate that is prevailing in the market, and the distortions that it has caused in the market, where some products are now twice their price elsewhere. So if you compare the prices in tax shops, for example, the product you might see going, let's say, at $1. And then when you go to formal retailers, that same product is now being priced at $2, which is 100% premium. So what has happened is that, again, consumers who hold US dollars do not go into these formal retail outlets, because why pay for $2 for something that is $1 elsewhere? So there will be a shift in consumers moving away from formal retailers and going to buy from informal retailers. And then again, another complaint coming from this particular statement by the Retailers Association, the Confederation of Zimbabwe Retailers. This statement has got a theme: set of the retail and wholesale sector statement. Again, one other thing that they are complaining about is the crackdown from the Financial Intelligence Unit, obviously, which they say that there isn't a level playing field, because as formal businesses, they are at the branch of the Financial Intelligence Unit, because they price in both US dollars and in ZiG. And if there's any disparity between the prevailing exchange rate and what they are using in their outlets, then they will get fined. or penalized. But those who are in the informal sector who are charging exclusively in US dollars are probably not facing the same treatment from the arms of the law. So this is the statement, and they are saying that they are now pricing for survival. What do they mean by pricing for survival? What they are realizing is that if they try using the official exchange rate and they say, okay, the official exchange rate is at $15 and 15 zig, and if they say, okay, so 15 zig, if I price a loaf of bread at $1, somebody comes and pays with 15 zig. When they want to replace that loaf of bread from the manufacturer will say, okay, give me $1 and not zig. Maybe some manufacturers are now saying, I'm only accepting US dollars, and this retailer now has 15 zig, which is not enough to buy foreign currency. Well, the law does not allow them to buy foreign currency from the interbank market for local transactions. So they've got zig. They want US dollar to be able to restock, and they are not able to do that through formal channels. If they go to the alternative market will say, for $1, you have to give me 30 zig. And yet they would have got 15 zig for their product. So that is the dilemma in the market. And they are saying, we are now pricing for survival, where we then say, instead of pricing it at $1, I just say in US dollars, my product is at $2 US, which makes them expensive when compared to the informal sector or to the tax shop. So they are complaining about that as well. They are saying the business environment is unconducive. That again is one of their complaints. And then they say they gave six measures that they think can be put in place to level the playing field. So they are saying it calls for a level playing field. And number one, the liberalization of the exchange rate, which is very funny because when you look at the objectives of the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, when on the 5th of April this year, the governor, as one of the objectives that he gave, he said that there is need to come up with a stable and sustainable exchange rate. And I'll quote one other thing that he mentioned, that's the Reserve Bank governor, was to say that we need a market-determined exchange rate. He says this policy is going to look at implementing a market-determined exchange rate. Now we have got the retailer saying that we need liberalization of the exchange rate, which means that there is something amiss there where the market does not believe we have got a market-determined exchange rate. Yet the Reserve Bank is saying we have a market-determined exchange rate. In fact, it was their objective. And then the retailers are also saying that we need supply chain discipline, where they are saying manufacturers and distributors should prioritize selling goods through formal retail channels to maintain a structured, accountable supply chain. Again, I think the manufacturers are likely to come out and say, no, as much as we are also pricing for survival, we are also distributing for survival. Because if I distribute to you, you want to pay me in zig, and the zig is losing value. So I would rather give this one or go direct to the consumer, which is some of the business are doing. They're going direct to the consumer and charging US dollars. So that's a dilemma, again, that needs to be sorted out. Equal rules for all, that's number 3. And then they are also saying, number 4, fuel in zig or removal of fuel taxes for retailers. They're saying that as retailers, because of the power challenges that we are facing, we are having to power our generators and to pay for that fuel for the generators. We are paying it in US dollars, and yet we are generating 80% of our sales in zig. So we are not able to buy. We are losing value by buying fuel in US dollars. So they're saying, why don't you allow us to buy fuel in zig or remove taxes? Because I think government gets about 40 US cents in form of taxes from fuel. So the retailers are saying maybe you need to help us in that aspect. This one is an interesting one, and I'm sure manufacturers will not be happy about this one. The retailers are also saying that open borders for imports. They are saying you should open borders for imports. We urge the government to open borders for basic goods and other essentials. manufacturers have taken government protection for granted. So this is another business sector accusing another business sector for taking government protection for granted, and they're saying this is leading to monopolistic behavior and price manipulation. So this is funny because the retailers think the manufacturers are manipulating prices, and yet when it comes to them, they don't believe they are manipulating prices. They say, no, we are pricing for survival. So I leave that for you to make your own judgment there. Then the last one, they call for what they call dollar-for-dollar transactions. They say goods procured in US dollars should be sold exclusively in US dollars. This will eliminate the operational difficulties caused by currency conversion. So this is what is the state of the retail sector and wholesale sector according to the Confederation of Zimbabwe Retailers Association, a statement that was released by the Confederation of Zimbabwe Retailers. So yeah, that's what we are hearing, and I think we've been talking about it because we are consumers. We see it every day. We have spoken about some products that are priced way above what they are priced at when you go to the informal sector, which again, going to the informal sector and the so-called tuck shops, to some extent, it's also risky because there was a report that was done recently showing that maybe 34% of the products that are being sold there, some of them are fake, some of them are underweight. So again, it's a risk that consumers will end up taking if they can't buy from the regulated and formal businesses.
All right, Kudzi, just briefly, we've got under 2 minutes to go now. What is the latest that we are getting from the central bank?
Yeah, the central bank also released a statement over the weekend, and I must say, just looking at the objectives that they wanted to achieve when the monetary policy was announced on the 5th of April, and they had 5 key issues that they announced, and one of them was that of currency and exchange rate instability, to deal with currency and exchange rate instability. And I think you all agree with me that at the moment, we do not have stability of the exchange rate. They wanted to deal with high demand of forex as a store of value. I think a lot of people are still demanding foreign currency as a store of value. And then they also wanted to deal with reduced confidence because of the gap between the official and the parallel market exchange rate. And we all know what the gap is like at the moment. They also wanted to deal with reduced use of the local currency. I was looking at their last numbers for the month of June, and it shows that deposits into the banking sector, 78% are in US dollars and 20-something% are in ZiG. That again shows you whether there is the increased use of the local currency or not. And just as another objective, lack of certainty and credibility of the exchange rate. You can also make your own judgment whether they've achieved in terms of making sure that there is certainty and credibility of the exchange rate. Okay. And something that the governor said was that this policy is going to look at implementing a market-determined exchange rate. Again, it is up to you to make a judgment whether they've achieved that. They wanted to deal with money supply growth. Unfortunately, the numbers that I've seen, I don't see.
All right, Kudzi, let me hold you there. We'll discuss that in detail tomorrow. That statement from the central bank, we'll discuss that in detail. Our time is up for today, but all the same, thank you so much for today.
Thank you, Tinashe.
Business Focus with Kudzi Sharara on the Champions League Breakfast.